I can confirm that we are now live streaming and it is 6:30.
And thank you, Natasha. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this evening's meeting of the Audit and Standards Committee, dated Wednesday, the 27th of January 2021 at 6:30 p.m. I am Councillor Jean Douglas and I chair the Audit and Standards Committee. And I can confirm that the following members are present and participating in this remote meeting. We have Councillor Prue Chandler, Councillor Robert Child, Councillor Margaret Glancy, Councillor Alan Hewson, Councillor Jacob Wilkinson, and myself, of course, Councillor Jean Douglas. Thank you. Moving on, we also have, I don't think we have any other councillors in attendance. We have the following Melton Borough Council officers in attendance. They are the Director for Corporate Services, Dawn Garton, the Assistant Director for Governance and Democracy, Kieran Stockley, the Head of Internal Audit, Rachel Ashley Cornt, the Democratic Services Manager, Natasha Taylor, and the Democratic Services Officer, Catherine Richards. This meeting is being held in public, and we welcome those members of the public who are watching us on YouTube. Any member participating by remote link who declares an interest in any item of business in terms which requires them to leave the room must ensure that they cannot be seen or heard during the agenda item. This shall be confirmed by Democratic Services. This member of staff will confirm to the remote member when they may rejoin the meeting. Should any aspect of the conference link fail during this meeting, I will call a short adjournment of up to 5 minutes to determine whether the link can quickly be re-established. And if the link cannot be re-established, the meeting shall be adjourned to a later date. In the event of link failure for individual members, the remote members will be deemed to have left the meeting at the point of failure of the equipment. And if the link cannot be re-established before the end of the meeting, then the presumption will be that the meeting should continue to deal with the item, providing the meeting remains quorate. Should the meeting no longer be quorate, the meeting shall be adjourned and any remaining items of business will be deferred. If the individual member's link is successfully re-established, then the remote members will be deemed to have returned at the point of re-establishment. I would ask members to indicate their wish to speak by raising their hand using that raise hand tool on Zoom. I will then invite each member in turn to make their contribution to the debate. Before proceeding to any vote, I will ensure that all members and officers have no further comments by confirming with the technical host of the webinar that no hands are raised. I will ask each member to indicate when asked whether they are voting for, against, or abstaining. This will be recorded by the Democratic Services Officer who will confirm the outcome of the vote. Any member who has been absent for the debate on a particular item due to a link failure must abstain from the vote on that item. Okay, so moving on then to the agenda itself. Item number 1, apologies for absence. So far I have Councillor Rebecca Smith and Councillor Chris Fisher who sent their apologies being as they cannot attend this evening. Do we have any further apologies that have been sent through?
No, we haven't been notified of any further apologies.
Thank you, Natasha, for Democratic Services. Right, so moving on to item number 2, minutes. This is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of December 2020. So hopefully you've had time, the members that are with us, to read through them. So I would like to propose the minutes, and I would look for a seconder unless we have any comments or queries.
I'm happy to second them, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson, much appreciated. So I will move on to the vote to approve the minutes. I'm just checking to make sure nobody wants to speak on them. No, it looks as if we're quite happy to go to the vote. So I shall go through your names in order, and you can indicate whether you want to vote for, against or abstain as regards the minutes. I have noticed that Councillor Prue Chandler has gone. We have had some technical and electrical issues this evening, so we're not sure why she's gone at this point. She may try and rejoin. So I shall move on to Councillor Child for his vote for. Thank you. Councillor Margaret Clancy.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Alan Hewson.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Jacob Wilkinson.
For.
Thank you. And myself as Chair, Jean Douglas, Councillor, of course, for. Thank you. So that is unanimous. I know Natasha usually confirms this, but it's easy to tell it is unanimous. So they have been carried. Thank you, members. So moving on to the third item, declarations of interest. So I'd like to invite members who wish to do so to make declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda for this meeting this evening. Do we have any declarations?
The only thing I can say is then, being a farmer, but I haven't actually got any sort of financial interest in the market, only other than using the market.
Oh, yes, thank you, Councillor Hewson. Would that be all right, Kieran, as legal advisor?
That's fine, Councillor Douglas. We'll make a note.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hewson.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any more? No, I've got nobody on the list coming up with the hands raised. Okay, so moving on to item number 4 on the agenda, the first item of the night, with a report to read, the internal audit progress report. I would like to invite Rachel Ashley Cornt as Head of Internal Audit to provide a brief introduction to this report. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. So the first report that I'm bringing to the committee this evening is a progress report on the delivery of the internal audit plan. So this is in the usual format that the committee will have seen before. So a copy of the full internal audit plan is provided within the appendix, and the latest status at the time of reporting is listed against each of the assignments. So we are making good progress on the audit plan. Whilst we only have 2 assignments that have been fully finalised at this point, we have a number that are significantly underway. We are obviously, because of the COVID pressures on staff, having a little bit more trouble getting responses to some of the requests and improving some of the reports, but we are progressing those, and we are getting support from management on that. So since the last committee meeting, we have 1 report which has been finalised in relation to the audit on the cattle market. So that's summarised for the committee this evening in section 2.5 of the report. Just to take you through some of the key issues there, just to highlight this audit, whilst it was an audit of the cattle market, was very much focused upon the open accounting arrangement that we have in place with the market, whereby the council has, under their agreement, a percentage that they are due to recover in relation to various different income streams. The open accounting arrangement is there to make sure that the council recovers the right amount from the market. So what we should be doing as an authority is going in and making sure that those figures that are being reported are accurate, and the payments that we're receiving are in line with the agreement. So what we've sought to do as an internal audit team is to go in and look at the process that the council goes through to verify those figures and undertake that review of the financial information, and make any recommendations as to how that process could be strengthened, and effectively to re-perform that where we can for the most recent period in the last year. So what we look at really is the payments that have been made, and what the basis for those. The report refers to block payments. Just to give a little bit of explanation around that. what we mean by that is at the start of the year, we estimate exactly how much we expect those various income streams to total based on information we have to hand. So we then collect a regular payment every month, which once at the end of the year, we reconcile against the actuals to make sure we either under or over recover the money so that it equals out at year end. But to make sure that we continue it throughout the year until those figures are in place, we can continue to maintain those block payments. So overall, we didn't identify any significant issues from the work that we performed. What we have done is made a few recommendations as to how the process can be strengthened, particularly around obtaining prime documentation in relation to some of those income streams and improving some of the questions that are raised, particularly including things like looking at the accounts to make sure we can reconcile those once those have been audited as well, so that we have some sources of assurance. So we have shared a template with the council's finance team, which hopefully they can use going forward to undertake those open book reviews, and we've made some recommendations which have all been agreed with management to take forward. So overall, we've given a satisfactory level of assurance for the design and the compliance with the controls, and we will be following up on the actions that are arising from that. I'll just pause at that point. I don't know whether there's any questions, anything you'd like me to cover further before I move on to the rest of the report.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Councillor Robert Child has a question. Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, a number of questions on this report. Did the person who did the audit compare the operation of the market with the terms of the contract, or didn't you look at the contract to see what they should be and shouldn't be doing?
So just to clarify through you, Chair, just to clarify on that, what we were looking at as part of this, as I say, was around the open book accounting arrangements. What we didn't do, and we specifically excluded from the scope of the audit, was any review around the contract management, because that has already been subject to a separate piece of work in the last 12 months, and we didn't want to duplicate that work. So I think probably what you're referring to would have hopefully been picked up a little bit more within that review. I don't know whether any of the management are able to comment on that further.
Through you, Chair, that review did cover what the contract and the various leases say, and what we were recovering off the contractor. That was a while ago now. I think copies were provided to members, but if you did wish to see that, we could certainly chase that up. But it did cover those kind of aspects, and I think would satisfy what you're asking.
Satisfy you as an officer, though? Were you comfortable with the report they've done?
Yeah, I think it was a good piece of work. It was very comprehensive, and I think it was also quite useful for understanding what aspects of the current contract could perhaps be negotiated further through those regular meetings. So I think it highlighted those areas where there needed to be tighter contract management, and perhaps where there were discussions to be held to maybe have a better deal for both parties, really, because it certainly highlighted some areas that perhaps weren't working for either side. So I think it was a good piece of work, but it certainly picked up a few things for further discussion as well.
That's what I was really getting at. Thanks for that. The consultancy review with that MJP Property Services when they produced that, Rachel, will we as members get a copy of that or not?
Sorry, through you, Chair, that is the report that Dawn was referring to. So
right, sorry,
I'm not sure how or when that was being shared.
Yeah, I think I seem to recall it was shared certainly with the portfolio holder. It's just was such a while ago now, I'm struggling to remember. So I think it was shared with some members, but I'm not sure how extensively. And as I say, I could follow that up with the officer concerned. And if you were wanting a copy, I could see if that was possible.
Yeah, could I leave that with you then, please, Dawn?
I'll ask about that.
Yeah, the prime records, Rachel. How important do you think it was that they weren't available?
So the records that we were looking at, obviously we looked at, as I mentioned, there's various different income streams. So the bulk of the majority of the income that we do recover is in relation to the sales, the cattle sales, of course, but there are other income streams such as car parking and various other bits and pieces that come in. So it was some of those smaller activities that we were looking for the prime records for. And so for taking car parking as an example, what we would like to see is a more robust cash receipting process so that we can see numerical receipts that we can match all of the income to and be sure that all of the receipts are fully accounted for. So these are the types of things that we were recommending. As I said, the big ticket value items, I suppose, in terms of the cattle sales, we were able to verify more from the records. It was more around some of those smaller income streams.
Okay, and hopefully they're going to cooperate with the council and put that in place for next time.
Hopefully, that's in the action plan. So hopefully officers will take that forward.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll give somebody else a chance now.
Thank you, Councillor Child, for your questions there. Very relevant, very useful, and for the officers' responses, most appreciated. Do we have any more hands raised? Well, there are no further hands raised at this point, but I would like to just make my own contribution. Whilst people may be raising hands. Oh, somebody said something?
Yes, I think it was Councillor Hewson. I don't know if we've we seem to be, I don't know if Councillor Hewson might be struggling with his connection.
Oh, hello, Councillor Hewson. I think you may have phoned in. Would you like to say, would you like to ask some questions, Councillor Hewson, at this point? I think he's gone.
He has actually gone at this time, Councillor Douglas. Now, I don't know if you wanted to wait, give him a minute.
Back. He's back. Hello, Councillor Hewson. We can see you on the screen. Are you with us?
Councillor Hewson doesn't seem to have any audio, Councillor Douglas. So
no.
If you would like to,
should we just wait a few moments?
Yeah, if you want, I'm wondering whether you wanted to, if you want to adjourn the meeting, we could then contact Councillor Hewson.
Well, yes, would that
we adjourn for a couple of minutes?
Yes. Shall we just take ourselves? Shall we mute ourselves and stop the video for a few moments?
Yeah. So I won't. What I'm going to do is I can't stop the live stream, but what I will do is put a screen share up so that it advises people that the meeting has been adjourned for a couple of minutes.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, Natasha.
And I'll mute everybody at the moment as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Douglas.
Yes.
Councillor Houston has now rejoined, and we've also got Councillor Chandler back with us as well.
Wonderful. That's really good news. Thank you, Natasha.
If we could just ask for Councillor Houston and Councillor Chandler to switch on their videos, then that would be great.
Yes. Yes, Councillor Houston and Councillor Chandler, we're just wondering if you can turn on your videos.
Yes, I have
thank
now.
you.
Thank you.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. You've both done that. Okay, thank you.
So when you're ready, you can reconvene and restart the meeting.
We shall recommence the meeting of the 27th of January 2021 of the Audit and Standards Committee. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, members, officers, staff. We had a short adjournment there, unfortunately. We have power cuts in the area, actually, so anything could happen. But we were discussing item 4, the internal audit progress report. We have no further hands raised, so I would like to just add my comments now as if I'm a member raising. Oh, we've got Councillor Houston with his hand raised.
I was trying to raise my hand.
Oh, go on then, Councillor Houston. You were actually trying to do so before.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Just a few items on the market then. The lease, it's 2017. How long does it go on for, or is it sort of a perpetual lease, or has it got a time scale? Can you hear that?
Yeah, through you, Chair. It does have an end date, but I'm not sure what that date is. But it is for a certain length of time. It's not in perpetuity.
No. And then within that, there's quite a few incomes which were classed as excluded incomes to the council. Is there any? Could we have any review of that on a new, when we do a new lease?
Again, through you, Chair, I know when we negotiated this lease and went out, that was considered at that time. So there's always going to be other business, I think, that a contractor does that isn't covered by the lease. But we did have people advising us, and we tried to include as much as we could.
Thank you. And then also, the North car park seems to claim about 60% of the parking. And if that's in the pipeline for perhaps not being there, apart from the loss of income, it's going to be a loss of parking space for people actually using the market. And is that going to be an issue in the future?
Again, that would have been out of the scope of the audit, so it would have to be considered as part of the consideration of where we go with the business case for the development of either that piece of land or indeed any area.
Okay, thank you.
I think just to add to that, through you, Chair, I think, again, referring back to the report that we mentioned earlier, the consultancy review, I believe, did look at some of these things in terms of what income streams were in scope. So again, that might be of interest to members.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Houston, for the question, and for the officers, Dawn and Rachel, for responding there. We have no further. We have. Yes, we have. Somebody else's hand raised. Councillor Wilkinson, if you'd like to contribute. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. This isn't on the cattle market. I don't know whether Rachel wants to carry on with the rest of the report first, or.
Yeah, I was just pausing there to take any questions on the cattle market. So.
Okay, I'll wait. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had some general comments to make as well, but my question about the cattle market has been pre-answered by Rachel, because we had a chair brief a couple of days ago and it was about the block payments. I just needed some clarification there. So it's all very new to me. So now we have access to the full report. I can revise that myself later this evening and tomorrow. If any members would like the full audit report, we have a summary in our packs, but if anybody would like a full report, and I did send an email out yesterday, do let me know and I can actually get that over to you, because I would like to look at the full report myself. Do we have any further questions on the market issue? No? Jacob, is yours about something completely different? Is it about the rest of the report? Yes, so thank you, Rachel, for those contributions. So yes, Jacob, if you'd like to focus on the rest of the report, and I will too in a moment. Thank you.
Shall I continue, Chair? Shall I just...
Yeah, does Rachel want to carry on first?
Oh, okay, yes, do you want to
Yeah.
present the rest of the report? Thank you.
Just a quick run through. So obviously that's the main headline for the report, is that finalised audit. But we, as I say, we're progressing with the rest of the audit plan, and that's provided in full in the rest of the pack this evening. There's also an update for the committee on the implementation of audit recommendations. So that's provided for you in the usual tables on pages on Appendix 3 and Appendix 4 of the appendix. So the number of recommendations has come down quite significantly since the last progress report, which I'm pleased to say. Some of that is due to the what we agreed at the last meeting, that we have consolidated the actions in relation to the intensive housing management scheme. But we are continuing to review that, and as we've agreed at the last meeting, we will be looking to do a full review of that as part of the 21-22 audit plan. But otherwise, the actions that remain outstanding all have revised dates for implementation. A number of those are as at the end of March. So hopefully at the next meeting, I'll be able to give the committee another further update on those, and perhaps close some more of those actions.
Yes, thank you, Rachel.
I think that's a quick run through of some of the other areas, but again, I'm happy to discuss any of the other areas further if that's helpful.
Okay, so we have Councillor Wilkinson, and then after that, Councillor Glancy. So, Councillor Wilkinson, would you like to ask any questions?
Thanks, Jeannie. It was just more generally on some of these housing and community ones. I know the revised date isn't till the end of March for these high priority ones, but I just, you know, it will come around quite quickly. And I know things have started to filter through to Cabinet in terms of the policies and relevant pro formas, but I just wondered if there was more of a general update as to where we are with these specific items under right to buy and things like that.
So through you, Chair, the latest update that I've received from officers is as per the report, but I do know from having looked at the Cabinet minutes myself that the right to buy policy has been, I believe it went last week to Cabinet for approval, so that has moved on. So hopefully the procedures can follow on from that. So I expect that one can be closed in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. I don't have any further updates on the other actions, but I could ask the relevant director to provide an update in the meantime if that was helpful.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson and Rachel, for your responses. Councillor Glancy next. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, my question is very similar vein. Just wondering, have we been notified of any slippage of the projected revised dates, and are we confident those dates are going to be met, basically?
Sorry, again, through you, Chair. As I say, the latest update I've had is what we've reported in the paper this evening. But if I contact the Director for Housing Communities and perhaps ask for him for some assurances to the committee in the meantime, I can make that request.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Yes, that would be a good idea, Rachel. Yes, thank you. Councillor Robert Child. Oh, Councillor Child, you're on mute. That's it.
Is that better?
Yes, that's it. Lovely.
Yeah, Rachel, just having a look at the internal audit for the rest of the year. Where's the slippage going to be from your perspective? We've got budgetary control, which was, I think I asked it something similar last time. That's not started. Where are we? Got 2 months left. I know it's normally done at the end of the financial year, but are you confident that you will get some way to doing that? And the cemetery audit report, will that come to the members next time on that one? If you could just answer those first.
So through you, Chair,
Yeah,
just taking
yes.
the second item first, we did, I think we mentioned the cemetery item at the last committee meeting, in that this was a bit of proactive advice in relation to some queries arising in relation to the cemetery. So there wasn't a report arising from that we would report to members, and no assurance opinion in relation to that. So that was some consultancy proactive advice. In relation to the budgetary control audit, as you can see, we are still scheduled to undertake that. It's still on the audit plan. I'm actually currently in discussions with the finance team as to how we can support and facilitate that audit in Q4, with the intention that at this point we fully intend to undertake the audit and hopefully be able to conclude before year end. In terms of slippage, I would hope that we will be able to deliver the audit plan. As I explained to the committee last time, we had at the start of the year delayed some of the audits, so we are behind the curve a little bit with some of those, but I think the progress we've made in the last quarter has brought us back up to speed. And I'm hopeful that we can deliver those assignments for you. The two audits that are yet to commence in relation to housing repairs and the landlord health and safety follow-up are intentional. We had agreed with the director that we would commission those for March, so those are scheduled in to be delivered then. So it's not that they've slipped off our work plan.
Okay.
Some assurance.
On Appendix 3, could we have another row in there on the template which says actions due over 6 months and not implemented, rather than finish it at 3 months?
That would be up to the committee. That's obviously, this is a standard template that we use with all of our audit committees. That tends to be the general cut-off that the committee members tend to be interested in. If it's over 3 months, that's usually where we focus our attention. And obviously then you get full details anyway, so you can see how far over 3 months they are. But if you wanted me to add that as a further column, I could do so.
Well, I was looking, Chair, at some of these dates, and I know the right to buy is probably going to be completed, but that was July 2019, and the others are November 19 and December 19. So I just thought it was just a suggestion.
Yes, it is a thought, actually, and it's a good suggestion. How do the other members feel about that? I mean, obviously we've got Prue's waiting to after this, but would it be best to have a vote on this? Bring a show of hands right now. Do you think we all ought to have an over 3 months column as well? I think it would be
row, not a column, row.
Row. Yes. Yes, of course, row.
I think as long as the committee still focus on those which are over 3 months, because I think there's a risk that the committee could then focus just on those that are over 6 months, when actually I suggest 3 months is enough for you to focus on. But as long as if it would be useful for information to have that, then I'm more than happy to do that split, as long as we still focus on those which are over 3 months as well.
Yes, okay. Is everybody happy with that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll have a 6 months column as well, then over 6 months, and we'll look at the 3 months and the 6 months. Yeah, that's great.
Just finally, just following on from Margaret's question on the two with the March 2021 deadline, I can't see really any chance of that being done, because with the look, it's all being handled through the business plan review 21-2. So I would think it's only a gut feeling. There's little chance of getting that for March, surely. I know you don't know, Rachel, because without talking to the officer, but I honestly can't see that being achieved within the next 8 weeks. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Councillor Child and Rachel, for the responses there. Right, so we have Councillor Prue Chandler waiting to ask a question or raise a concern. Thank you, Prue.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going back to the cattle market. I would like the full report, please.
I will send it to you.
I haven't even had the partial one, so
yes,
I'm in the dark. But
Yes.
what I am concerned about is that I've been challenged by some local farmers that the commission charges have risen drastically. Now, I don't know because we don't sell through a mountain market, but if it has, I mean, I can't quite understand that. There's less stock on the farms, and if you're going to put the prices up, you're going to get less people take stuff to Melton. I mean, people will sell dead weight, and for those of you who don't know what dead weight is, it's straight to the abattoir.
Mm.
And I would like to know if the commission charges have gone up. I don't know if Dawn knows at all whether the throughput's less. I do know.
No, I'm not sure about that. Again, I can ask. There was a question from Councillor Child earlier that I was going to follow up, so I can ask that one as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Dawn.
Okay, I'll send you the full report, Councillor Chandler, as well.
Thank
and,
you. Thank
and
you.
I'm going to be looking at it very carefully as well. I'll look out for the commission mention, if at all. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Any further questions on? No hands raised at the minute. So I will just add a few comments of my own. On page 14, 2.1, I was really pleased with the comment that 93% productivity has been delivered against the target set of 90% as regards the delivering on to target and on the audit plan. And I was pleased to see the cattle market included as well, of course. And what else have I've got? Yes, on page 17, appendix 1, I was pleased to see that there was an audit on the procurement compliance, particularly after the new procedures in procurement have recently been adopted. So it makes sense to follow it up as soon as possible and to keep revising it as well, as certainly in the early, kind of times, next few years. I'll be keeping my eye on that because this is all very new to me. And I was also quite pleased to see the budgetary control mentioned. It hasn't been started, and when I raised this at the chair brief, they said it will be done. They said we do expect this will be done this year. So I was quite impressed with that. I assume it would be difficult to do in the short time scale, but sometimes these things do fall together quite well. I was really pleased to see the asset management mentioned, because this is going to be really interesting and useful, because asset management is all about our money and how we can raise funds. And, I just think that's a real strong theme amongst the councillors at the minute as we're looking at our assets generally. So that was a good choice there. And finally, just to say in Appendix 5, it's nice to see a little bit of an explanation of what audit actually is. I felt the evaluation was realistic, i.e. that it is not a fail-safe process, and management still have the prime responsibility of developing robust systems of risk management and internal control and governance. So we do our best. We're thin slicing a lot of the time and trying to check out what we are looking at. But we're not meant to be filling in the gaps for management. They're expected to have the prime responsibility, as it says. So I thought that was quite a nice description there. Anybody who likes descriptions, and I found that was quite clarifying, especially for the new members. Do we have any more raised hands on that? No. So okay, well, in that case, no further hands. I'd like, we're just really noting these. So we still need to propose and second. So I would like to propose that we note them, and the report and the progress made by the internal audit team in the delivery of the audit plan. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Oh, thank you very much, Vice Chair. Councillor Wilkinson. That's great. So thank you, members, for that. It was a good debate, actually. And thank you, officers, as well, for your responses. So moving on to item number 5, the assessment against the CIPFA statement on the role of the head of internal audit. So once again, Rachel Ashley Corns, as head of internal audit, will provide a brief introduction to this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So as you've explained in the introduction, this is an assessment against the CIPFA standard that was issued recently. So what we wanted to do really, this sets out how the most effective way for internal audit and the authority to work together. That includes with the committee and with senior management, and to make sure we get the best value from the internal audit service. So obviously every year I do self-assess against the public sector internal audit standards, and that's reported back to you as part of the annual report. But I just thought it was a good opportunity to have a look at the guidance that came out from CIPFA, do a little bit of a self-assessment against that for the council, and some of those areas I assessed myself, some of them were for the council to assess as to how they interact with internal audit, and we've pulled that together, and I thought it would be useful to share that with the committee to give you some assurances over how we're delivering your internal audit service, and any areas where we've identified through that assessment we could further develop and strengthen our arrangements. So I think that I've provided a full copy of the assessment to the committee, and I think that it's very positive, and I hope that it gives members of the committee some assurances around the fact that internal audit is working effectively and we are in compliance with good practice. There are a small number of recommendations that we've come up with that we've agreed with management and have included as an action plan in the report, and I think those really are about further strengthening some of those rather than any significant gaps or risks that they represent. So one of the actions that I'd highlight to the committee is there is a reference in there to undertaking a review of the effectiveness of the audit committee. So obviously that's of interest to the members this evening. This is something that it's good practice for the committee to do on a regular basis, ideally annually, but I'm not aware of an assessment being conducted at Melton for some time. So it would be a good opportunity for you to reflect upon how the committee operates, and I can support and feed into that process. I've supported a number of audit committees in conducting those assessments. I have discussed it with Councillor Douglas as the chair as to how we can do that, and hopefully over the next couple of months that's something we can look to pull together. So that's one of the recommendations which should be of particular interest to the committee. All of the actions have time frames, and what I would propose is that I report back to the committee in 6 months on where we are with those actions and whether those have been completed appropriately. One of the other actions is around projects and making sure that we're suitably embedding internal audit into that process so that we're engaged in the initiation stage of key projects, not too far down the line when things have hopefully not, but things kind of gone wrong and we could have gained something from internal audit engagement a little bit earlier. And I've already spoken to the council's project lead on that, and we're actively looking to engage and support managers undertaking project management in making sure they consider internal audit involvement quite early on in the project. So I think it's already proving useful, and hopefully that it's of interest to the committee, and it gives you some assurance, as I say, that we are already very much in line with best practice. So I'm happy to take any questions on the basis for the assessment or anything specific. Thank you.
Yes, okay, well, yes, I would like to open the debate amongst members, and as I do so, I would like to invite in time a proposer and a seconder for the recommendation to note the findings and the action plan arising from this. So over to you, members. Already we have Councillor Child with his hand raised, and do raise your hands with the raise hand function, members, if you want to speak. So Councillor Child, yes, so if you'd like to go ahead, we're all listening.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I totally agree with you with regard to the review of the effectiveness of the committee. I think it's definitely something that needs to be undertaken, and within the next 2 or 3 months, to me, it'd be ideal. Just looking at the 3 or 4 rows above it, the work with you get the copies of the audit reports produced for the council's IT service. About what I'm just wondering, is it underway that you're working with the IT to extend this framework? Is that likely to continue, Rachel?
So through you, Chair, so what this action is referring to, obviously Melton's part of the Leicestershire ICT partnership. So what we wanted to do and what we've been trying to do with the partnership over the last few years is, rather than all of the audit services for each of the respective councils conducting their own audits and taking up the time and resource within the IT team, at various points during the year. It would be useful if we could have one audit every year that's then shared with the partners, and we can take assurance and third-party assurance really from their own auditors. So that's something that I understand is the discussions are underway about building that into the governance going forward. And I don't know whether Dawn had anything further to add to that.
Yes, just through you, Chair. Members may recall there was a report to Cabinet just before Christmas about the new ICT arrangements moving forward, and underpinning all of that transition to the new service. We're looking at a whole suite of new governance arrangements for the IT partnership. And I think this has been one of those where everyone agrees it's a really good idea, because the last thing we want is a lot of clashing audits being undertaken by 3 different councils. It's proved a little bit more trickier, I think, to get the auditors at one of the other councils to kind of move on this. And I think that new suite of governance documents, when we approve that, supporting that new service going forward, I think that will just give us that hooking really to get this agreed once and for all and get it moving forward.
Yeah, I thought this might be the case. You know, you could get 1 or 2 who are not that keen to work with you, but that's reassuring though, Dawn. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Child and Dawn and Rachel, for answering Councillor Child's concerns and questions there. Do we have any further hands raised? Not at this stage. Well, therefore, I'll chip in with my my thoughts, and in the meantime, other members might want to raise their hands. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, basically, this is a self-assessment against the latest recommended best practice guidelines, and in my profession as a teacher, this is what we also used to do. And if everybody does it across the nation, then you've got a kind of like a standardization of practice going on. So it's a very useful exercise to undertake. You've got to be very honest with yourselves and use it to develop and move forwards and make progress. And I think actually in the light and against the backdrop of the audit organisational challenges and changes to the existing system. So there's a lot of changes in the audit across the nation at the moment. And I think self-assessment is the way forwards at the moment. I think it's the only thing we can do, take it upon ourselves to do. And I think, you know, the committee self-assessing as well will be a really, really useful, wonderful thing to do. I think we'll learn a lot from doing so. Overall, looking at the questions, and it was really good to look at the standardisation questions as well to see what is being considered. I was pleased that we are meeting all of the requirements. Occasionally we had a partially covered. So yeah, and good to see also that there's an action plan at Appendix B, very realistic and not too heavy, not too overwhelming. And I'm pleased to see that an update will be provided in 6 months' time to our committee. So all in all, I just think this really is the way forwards in the light of audit organisations not always being able to come through as we'd like them to, as they have done in the past. So yeah, well done. I don't know if anybody else wants to add any comments or ask any questions. I'm just no hands are raised. In that case, members, if you're happy, I shall propose then that we note the findings of this assessment, and I just need somebody to actually second that. Do we have a seconder?
I'll move that.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Child. That's wonderful. Okay, so yes, so the findings are noted, and the action plan is as well is noted. So thank you for that, members and officers, for bringing that to us. So moving forwards then to item number 6, the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000, RIPA, update 2019 to 2020. So now we have Kieran Stockley, the monitoring officer, to provide a brief introduction to this report. Thank you, Kieran.
Thank you, Chair. As you've highlighted, the purpose of the report is to provide members with the annual update in relation to the Council's use of their powers under the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, which I will call RIPA from here on forward. and also provide an update on the RIPA inspection that took place last year. Members will be aware that RIPA sets out a regulatory framework for the use of covert investigatory techniques when looking to do and take enforcement action. Now, local authorities are limited in their use of these COVID techniques to the purposes of preventing crime and disorder. And from November 2012, any RIPA authorisation for covert surveillance, if you like, had to have approval from a magistrate's court. So these types of techniques are restricted and must only be used when it's considered necessary, proportionate, and generally as a last resort. We should always try and use overt techniques wherever possible, and only resort to covert techniques when these overt techniques have proved unsuccessful. Generally, when we're looking at enforcement action, we try and use open source information, which is information that is available to us without having to use covert techniques. Now, the use of the council's RIPA powers have declined significantly over the years. There are still offences that the council can use RIPA for, such as fly tipping offences, and I believe there's some licensing offences as well, but they must cross the serious crime threshold. But as I've said previously, those investigations, it must be necessary and proportionate to use these powers. By way of an update for 1920, the council has not had to use any RIPA or apply for any RIPA authorisations during that time, and will continue to apply that sensible approach when dealing with enforcement matters going forward. I then moved to the inspection which took place last year. It was undertaken in 2020. The council's RIPA processes are subject to quite intense scrutiny, and we're routinely inspected approximately every 3 years by the Investigatory Powers Commissioner's Office, IPCO, just to ensure that our RIPA processes, policies, procedures and practices are still sound and up to date. Now, we were subject, my predecessor, the monitoring officer, was subject to a telephone-based inspection in April 2020. The monitoring officer is appointed as the senior responsible officer for the purposes of RIPA. The outcome of that telephone-based inspection negated the need for a more detailed physical inspection, and the findings of that inspection are detailed in the report at paragraph 5.4.3. One of the points to highlight was the inspector did comment that it is to be applauded that whilst the council has not exercised its RIPA powers since 2010, there is a robust training regime, with the latest training being undertaken in June 2019 by an external provider and further training scheduled for June 2020, which is very positive. And whilst the council's current RIPA usage is low, we feel that it's still essential that we maintain our RIPA processes and procedures. They remain under close scrutiny. RIPA awareness will continue to be maintained throughout the organisations, even if we're not seeking to obtain authorisations or use these covert techniques. We will continue to monitor, review and report on RIPA usage in line with the legislation. And I believe the recommendations are for members to note both the usage of the council's powers and also the outcome of the inspection from last year. So I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Kieran. That was well presented. Yes, that was great. Okay, so I would like to open the debate. I am looking for a proposer and a seconder with this one in due course. So yes, and members, any hands raised? If nobody's got their hands raised, I shall start. I shall jump in first this time. And if anybody wants to, oh, we've got Councillor Hewson. Just put his hand up. Go on then, Councillor Hewson. Go for it.
If this was earlier on in the year, but are we actually going to have any formal training for the audit and standards on this? They were saying that we were going to have some more training about it, but have we actually got any dates for next year to do this?
Councillor Hewson, is that specific to RIPA?
No.
Yes. Well, not just for the, over this, what you were talking about, the covert.
The short answer is I don't believe there's any training scheduled, so I can't give you a date, but it is absolutely something that will be built into the member development programme, which will be discussed. I'm looking at Tasha at the Constitutional Working Group. So it is already on the list of things to be added. I understand that there was a request before Christmas for some additional guidance to be provided to members on covert training. That's being worked on and will be issued to members shortly.
Thank you, because there's quite a few new members on the council and we haven't had that training.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hewson. That was a really good comment, and it was very worthwhile asking. And thank you, Kieran, for responding. Rachel, would you like to contribute as internal auditor head?
Yes, I just wanted to add to that, actually. I thought that was a nice link back to what we talked about the effectiveness of the audit committee, because I think when we do that assessment, some of the things, as I say, I've performed this quite a lot with other committees, quite often what comes out of that is actually some things to feed into a training plan. So that might be something that Councillor Hewson might want to raise as part of that effectiveness review when we do a bit of a survey with members on, do you have any training needs? Those are exactly the sorts of things that you might want to flag, and we can make sure we build that into training going forward. So hopefully that will help support the member development process as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Any further hands? Shall I come in with my comments in the meantime? There's still time for you to raise your hands with the raise hand facility. Yeah, I mean, I just thought it was good to see that the RIPA now includes the use of the internet. So, I mean, I thought it would have been long included, but it just appears to be more of a recent thing. Good to see that there's been recent training updates for staff, for as Rachel points out. Obviously the use of the RIPA powers are low, not being used since 2010, but the policy really does need to be in place. In fact, there's a legal requirement for it to be in place in case of being needed. And yeah, you can only use them if a serious crime is suspected of having been committed or about to be committed. But anyway, yeah, members, would you like to, any further comments from yourselves? I think it's quite straightforward, isn't it? No hands raised. Okay, well, actually that was quite a useful discussion. I really do like this self-assessment idea, and the fact that we can all feel involved and come alive, really, and the process is invigorated, I think, when we all kind of contribute to our own ideas of, you know, what development is and what we need. So yeah, I would like to therefore propose that we note the update for the period April 2019 to March 2020 on this regulation of investigatory powers Act 2000 RIPA update 2019 to 20, as well as note the outcome of the RIPA inspection. And so I just need a seconder for that.
I'm happy to second that, Jeannie.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Jacob Wilkinson as Vice Chair. Okay, so yeah, we have noted that, that paper. That's really great. Moving on then to item number 7, urgent business. I confirm that there is no urgent business. Therefore, I'd like to thank you all for coming along, members. It's been a really good evening. Thank you for your contributions and for the officers' responses. It was really good. I would like to announce that the meeting is closed at 19:34. Is that all right, officers? Are you happy with that?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, members, and see you again soon.